Raven Creek, Montana Territory, autumn, 1887. Her pregnancy brought disgrace. So her mother traded her, an overweight, shamed girl, to a giant cowboy for a single cow. The wind that morning was sharp and dry, cutting through Raven Creek like it meant to scrape the world clean. The town was little more than a cluster of weather-beaten buildings and a stockyard where hope got sold by the pound. The sun had barely lifted when Martha Galloway dragged her daughter across the cracked earth, one hand gripping Clara's arm like she might bolt. Clara Galloway, 20 years old and 7 months pregnant, waddled beside her in a faded cotton dress stretched thin around her belly. Her cheeks were pink from the cold and the humiliation. She kept her eyes on the ground. "Keep your eyes straight, Clara," Martha snapped. "You've got nothing to look proud about." The market buzzed to life around them. Ranchers bellowed over cattle, pigs squealed, traders hawked rope and rusted tools. But what drew eyes that morning wasn't livestock, it was the sight of a round-bellied girl being hauled through the gates like she was up for auction. Whispers rippled. "That Galloway girl, the fat one. Knocked up. Her mama's selling her off." By the far fence stood Harlan Boone, a giant of a man, over 6 feet tall, shoulders broad as a barn door, his face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He didn't move as Martha approached. "You Harlan Boone," she barked. He nodded once. "You said you'd take her." His gaze passed over Martha and settled on Clara, who stared at the dust. He said nothing. Martha snorted. "You're getting the better end. She eats like a hog and cries like a busted pipe. But you'll get your cow." A ranch hand led forward a glossy black milk cow. Harlan's eyes flicked to it, then back to Clara. "She got a name?" he asked, his voice low and gravel-deep. "Clara Galloway. 20. Useless as a fence post and carrying a bastard, Martha said flatly. "You want her? Take her. Don't, and I'll leave her by the creek for the buzzards." Clara's knees trembled. "You got anything to say, girl?" Martha snapped. Clara tried to speak, but nothing came out, only air and shame. "She don't cook, don't clean, and cries like a widow at dawn," Martha sneered. "But if you need a womb to keep your bed warm, she'll do." Harlan stepped forward. For a heartbeat, Clara thought he might speak to her. Instead, he handed the cow's lead rope to a stable boy. "She'll ride with me," he said simply. Martha gave a cruel smirk. "Well, at least now she's worth something." She turned on her heel without a glance back. Clara stood still, the cold biting through her thin shoes. People watched, curious, disgusted, pitying, but no one moved. "She's yours now, cowboy," someone shouted. Harlan said nothing. He just nodded toward his wagon. Clara followed, heart hammering, cradling her belly like a fragile secret. As she climbed onto the seat beside him, she whispered, "I'm not a thing." Harlan flicked the reins. "Ain't one not to me." And they rode off into the dust. The prairie stretched endless and silent. Neither spoke. The wagon creaked and rattled, the quiet between them was heavy, but not cruel. By dusk, the sky burned rust and violet. They turned off the main trail toward a cabin tucked among low hills, sturdy, simple, with smoke curling from the chimney. "You can come in," Harlan said, climbing down. Clara followed, her steps unsteady. Inside smelled of cedar and earth. One room, clean, with a table, 2 chairs, a narrow couch near the window. "You can rest there," he said. She sat carefully, afraid to touch anything. He poured a glass of water, set it beside her, and stepped out into the evening. That night, she couldn't sleep. The silence was strange, no shouting, no footsteps. Just crickets and her own heartbeat. At dawn, she woke to the smell of food. On the table, biscuits, eggs, bacon, milk. Outside, Harlan split wood, sleeves rolled, muscles flexing with every swing. Clara stared at the plate. No one had ever made her breakfast without cruelty. Tears slipped down quietly. She took a bite. It was warm, real. Through the open window, she whispered, "Thank you." Harlan didn't answer, but his axe paused mid-swing. Days passed in steady rhythm. He didn't speak much. Didn't stare. Didn't judge. His presence filled the silence like something solid and kind. He fixed the creaky door, left a quilt on her chair, never said a word about either. Every gesture seemed to say, "I see you." And for the first time in her life, she began to breathe easy. One evening, as he sanded a cradle, she said softly, "My father died when I was 8. He didn't look up, just listened. He used to sing while mending fences," she went on. "Mama said I looked too much like him. Called me soft. Said no man would ever want me." Harlan kept sanding. Quiet. Patient. "I used to sleep in the barn sometimes, just so I wouldn't have to hear her." When she finished, he nodded once and placed the cradle rail beside her. No pity. Just understanding. That night, she ate without shame. In the days that followed, small kindnesses bloomed between them, a new cushion here, a mended shawl there. Harlan built her a rocking chair. She sewed him a handkerchief with a crooked H. The next morning, it was tied around his wrist. And Clara cried softly, not from sadness, but because for once, what she gave had been accepted. Weeks later, trouble found them again. A wagon rolled up the trail, her mother, the preacher, and the sheriff. Martha climbed down, her eyes sharp as nails. "I'm here for my daughter." "You traded her," Harlan said evenly. "I bartered custody," Martha snapped. "She's blood. She belongs with me." "What does Clara want?" Harlan asked. Martha scoffed. "She doesn't know what she wants." Clara stepped forward, trembling but firm. "You sold me," she said. "You embarrassed me," Martha hissed. "You sold me for a cow," Clara said louder. "But at least now someone sees me as a person, not a burden." Martha's jaw tightened. "You'll regret this." Clara rested a hand on her belly. "My child will grow up wanted. Not traded. Not broken." Martha turned and rode off without another word. When the sound of wheels faded, Clara leaned against the doorframe, shaking. "You did that," Harlan said quietly. "I finally said it," she whispered. "Say it again," he told her. "I'm not property," she murmured. "I'm not shame. I'm not a mistake." And this time, she believed it. That night, the storm came. Inside the barn, Harlan worked beside her through the pain, steady, calm, sure. When the baby's cry finally filled the air, he smiled, or softening his face. "She's here," he said, placing the tiny bundle in Clara's arms. Clara looked down at her daughter, tears streaming. "She's beautiful. She's proof you lived," Harlan said gently. "Proof you fought." Rumors spread, as they always do. But this time, they carried awe instead of scorn. Clara Galloway was no longer the shame of Raven Creek, she was the woman who survived it. She came to town with her baby in her arms and the giant cowboy beside her. People watched, but no one mocked. Spring came, soft and green. Under the wide oak tree behind their home, barefoot in the grass, they made their own vows. "I see you," Harlan said. "I believe you," Clara whispered. And when he kissed her, it wasn't rescue, it was recognition. That night, holding her baby close, Clara whispered into the quiet. "You weren't born from shame, my love. You were born from choice. From love." And in that small cabin beneath the stars, she finally knew she didn't need to be smaller to deserve peace. She just needed to stay home.